A child who has to tap the doorframe or something bad happens isn't just anxious. That pattern is the signature of OCD, and it's wired and treated differently. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to fundamentally shift how you understand your child's behavior by distinguishing pediatric obsessive-compulsive disorder from generalized childhood anxiety. Let's dive right in.
Like that quote says, tapping a doorframe to prevent a disaster isn't just everyday worry. It is the absolute hallmark of OCD. For you, as parents trying to make sense of your kid's behavior, drawing a really clear line between OCD and general anxiety is absolutely critical. We're going to map out those differences right now so you can see exactly what's going on beneath the surface.
Section 1. Beyond normal worry, identifying the specific patterns.
Okay, let's break this down. The crucial point here is that OCD brings a very specific 1-2 punch. You get an unwanted, intrusive obsession plus a ritualized compulsion that the child feels they just have to do to neutralize their distress. It's like being stuck in a rigid loop. Generalized anxiety, on the other hand, is much more of a diffuse worry. It's everyday stuff, stressing about school or health, but crucially, it happens without those strict, rule-bound rituals.
Now, you might be thinking, well, my toddler loves their bedtime routine. And you know what? That is perfectly normal. Normal routines, like a strict bedtime sequence or wanting symmetry, are actually adaptive. They give kids a sense of predictability. But if missing that routine causes severe distress, or if they have to repeat an action until it feels just right, well, then we're looking at a totally different kind of control issue. It's a massive red flag that they're struggling to let go of an urge. As kids grow up, we actually see the themes of OCD evolve right alongside them. It usually starts in early childhood with simple fears, like getting hurt or being separated from parents. Then, as they hit adolescence and their brains get more complex, the OCD latches on to heavier moral, religious, or even sexual themes. Eventually, in adulthood, it tends to consolidate into those classic patterns we hear a lot about, like intense contamination fears or constant checking. Part 2. Two different brain circuits, the biology of behavior.
So let's look under the hood. Generalized anxiety basically lives in the brain's threat center, the amygdala-prefrontal network. But OCD, it operates on a completely different biological pathway. It hijacks what's called the CSTC loop. Think of the CSTC loop as a superhighway for habit and action selection. Because of this, pediatric OCD isn't just an anxiety issue. It's really a disorder of cognitive and emotional control. All right, I want to pause for a quick honesty flag here. Let's be clarifying and careful without being alarming. The clearest brain imaging data we have on this CSTC circuit mostly comes from adult samples, and obviously children's brains are still actively maturing. So think of these markers as illustrative, just to help you understand the concept. They are definitely not diagnostic tools. If rituals are actually taking over your child's day, you need to see a qualified professional. We never diagnose from an explainer.
You might be wondering, why does knowing the biology actually matter for me and my kid? Well, it's pretty simple. If the mechanism in the brain is different, then the way we step in to treat it, both at the doctor's office and right in your living room, has to be different too. Which brings us to Section 3, family dynamics and control, how loved ones fit in. We really need to talk about family accommodation. Look, as parents, our deepest biological instinct is to protect our kids, right? When they're terrified, we instantly want to reassure them or help them finish that ritual just to make the fear go away. But here's the catch. Doing that only temporarily reduces their distress. In the long run, it inadvertently maintains and strengthens those exact obsessive-compulsive cycles. It's what we call a dyadic loop. The child's intense anxiety shapes the parent's behavior, and then the parent's accommodation limits the child's ability to cope on their own. Over time, by accommodating these rituals, we accidentally prevent our kids from learning the most important lesson of all, that they can actually tolerate uncertainty and distress all by themselves. Section 4. The ERP treatment difference, retraining the brain. Because we're dealing with that specific habit loop, the absolute first-line treatment for pediatric OCD is a specific type of cognitive behavioral therapy called exposure and response prevention, or ERP. It's a 3-step sequence. First, you systematically trigger the obsession to bring on the distress. That's the exposure. Second, you actively inhibit the urge to perform the neutralizing ritual. That's the response prevention. And third, you help the child safely face that fear until the distress naturally fades away. And this is where the clinical pivot happens. General anxiety is also treated with exposure-based CBT, sure, but it doesn't need that response prevention step because there aren't any rigid compulsions to block.
OCD treatment, however, absolutely relies on response prevention. You literally have to block the ritual to retrain that CSTC habit superhighway in the brain. The data completely backs this up. Think about the landmark POTS trial, the pediatric OCD treatment study. It shows us that combining this specific ERP therapy with an SSRI medication gives kids the absolute highest rates of success. It's way higher than either CBT or sertraline alone, and obviously vastly outperforms a placebo. It is literally the gold standard of care. But listen, the healing doesn't just happen in a therapist's office. At home, programs like SPACE actually train parents to step out of that accommodation loop we just talked about and step into a role of supportive non-avoidance. That means identifying exactly where you're accommodating the OCD, making a plan to gradually reduce that help, and supporting your child through their distress while cheering on their independence. Finally, Section 5, the first brave step, empowering the child. I absolutely love this concept. We can take the incredibly grueling work of refusing a ritual and completely reframe it as a fear me not brave mission. The underlying logic of exposure therapy, facing the fear head on instead of performing the ritual to escape it, is the exact same engine that our brave missions are built on. It fundamentally shifts the narrative. Your child goes from being a helpless victim of anxiety to an active, empowered hero. So, here's the bottom line. Understanding the difference between diffuse, everyday worry and the specific habit loop biology of OCD is your first brave step as a parent. The path ahead is going to take patience, definitely some professional guidance, and a whole lot of courage from both you and your kid. So, after everything we've uncovered today, what brave mission are you and your child going to tackle first?